When I try to describe Ninja Theory's Hellblade Senua's sacrifice to others, I find myself relentlessly falling back on the term bold. Bold because it is truly uncompromising in its portrayal of not just select symptoms of certain mental illnesses, but human struggle and how cruel it can feel. First and foremost, Hellblade is a powerful auditory experiment. The moment you step over the threshold and into Senua's world, the whisper of a woman, one of many entities that will come to share in your headspace, gets uncomfortably close to your left ear to tell you all manner of things, some of which you want to know and others you wished you didn't. Other voices floating about in your headphones, and I'm not being dramatic here when I say the game must be played with them, are just as invasive. They can be full of truisms, aid you in just the right moments, but also falsities. To determine which stream of dialogue is useful is a skill one has to sharpen over time. Fail to do so allows them rather insidiously to colour your competence and even attitude. It reminds me of a test they ran on athletes. One group was played a positive recording and another negative. Both had profound impacts on their athletic performance. Diegetic sound comes at you from every direction in Hellblade, but it is more than just background noise. I would go so far as to say that it is often wielded as a kind of weapon. The same is equally true for the soundtrack, brilliantly composed by David Garcia Diaz and Andy LaPluega, both responsible for different elements, Viking and character themes respectively. Bizarrely, the focus feature wound up offering some respite for me. If a combat scenario had been particularly harrowing, if the tension was too thick, I would find a spot, up high in the trees, in the stream below, or an object like a wind chime hanging from the beams of a house, and focus on it. The world would grow quiet, leaving one solitary sound. I came to realize that I was harnessing the game's sound in my own way, wielding it for myself. That the game allowed for that kind of manipulation, or conversely managed to manipulate me into this ritualistic sort of behaviour within the game space, is startling. This won't be relevant to every player, but I felt it important to record this byproduct in my experience. Focus plays quite nicely, no pun intended, into the puzzles, which can be relatively simple in nature, yet require Senua to focus, to dull the background noise and look hard for something, a shape, a way forward. It works. Had the game been filled with head-scratching challenges to flex your brain muscles, it all would have been too much input on the senses. This is also established in a later level that part of Senua's perceived reality and strengths is a knack for spotting patterns, recurring objects, items, moves, sounds and such. It helps make her a formidable warrior. Speaking of which, combat is very much about identifying an enemy's patterns and countering them at the best possible moment. It allows Senua to deal a torrent of devastating attacks and gain the upper hand. Of course, one could simply hack away without much thought and still get the job done, but it does needlessly drag out the difficult work ahead. Senua is at her best when exploiting a point of weakness rather than brute forcing an encounter. So, much like the puzzles, combat is simple, and thank goodness it is. Because if Senua falls too many times in battle, she will give up. The game's save file will be deleted, and the player must start all over again, that is, if they choose to. The concept of permadeath seems to have wrought the ire of critics and players alike, which I understand. I also see why this decision was made, and made final, i.e., as a crucial part of the base experience and not in, say, an unlockable mode. Imagine facing dozens of complex battles, requiring trial and error tactics or long and involved strategies that grind away at your patience, knowing that, should you die, you will have to start the game all over again, thus turning a 6 to 8 hour long experience into a lengthy nightmare. Why is it necessary at all? Well, in my view, what permadeath narratively explores here, again, rather boldly, is the finality of giving up. The very essence of Hellblade is about suffering and what it takes to overcome it, if you are even able. To give up, or die in this case, is to surrender to that suffering. Rather than willingness to do so, however, The game examines how mental fortitude can weaken with every loss. It's important to note that this feature isn't instantly executed. You have several chances before the final bell tolls. Each time Senua falls, her darkness continues its assault and spreads, bringing her that much closer to death or surrender. When it reaches her head, and I can only assume her mind, her struggle is lost forever. This is what makes it necessary, in my view, but I would like to see more games challenge audience assumptions, so on that topic I admit to being biased. In any case, it interests me greatly that with all this talk of narrative dissonance, Hellblade has not been complimented for implementing a mechanic that makes perfect narrative sense, rather than divest all meaning from play. Of course, none of this would be impactful or important if it weren't for Senua. Senua is unlike most video game protagonists. Stepping into her shoes isn't like stepping into the shoes of, say, Nathan Drake, or Aloy, or Solid Snake. Her world isn't fun. Walking a mile in her shoes is hard work, and not something I could just sit down and play for several hours straight. The experience was frightening on occasion, confusing and draining. Lucky for me then that I could turn off the console whenever I needed a break, and I needed a few. Now, you might think that sounds like a bad thing. Poor design, maybe, but it really isn't. The need to take a break from Hellblade can be likened to film critic Mark Kermode walking out of the critically acclaimed Blue Velvet for the first time. It isn't bad at all, but is so unsettling, so absolutely unrelenting in its portrayal of Senua's reality that it can be unbearable over prolonged periods, too much to handle. A testament, really, to what Ninja Theory have achieved. Rather than being a stereotype the player might fear, Senua is sympathetic. Experiencing her life allows us to understand how strong she truly is, and she is strong as an ox. Though Senua is human and vulnerable and scared, she's able to face her torments head on, no matter how horrifying they might be, and what a remarkable character she is. There is a chilling element at play here I feel I must mention. When she looks directly at you, a feeling. Voyeurism, perhaps. I say this because it's entirely possible that you, the player, are a part of what causes Senua so much distress. That you are a part of her darkness, just another voice or presence looming in the background. Like the other voices and influences in her life, you too are in a position to help or to hinder her progress as she journeys to recover what is lost to her. In that respect, Hellblade asks a very unique question in the mystery surrounding the dynamic between player and playable character. The game is full of little introspections like this, and challenges to the norm. Taken at face value, Hellblade is an exercise in mental illness, but look a little deeper and it is much, much more, not just in what subject it broaches, but how and why it functions interactively. Ninja Theory as a studio has been very open, transparent even, during the development of Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice and what it is they want to achieve. Though I appreciate and commend the business model which they've employed in an effort to revive the AA category of video game and, in essence, reinvigorate a market that has been divided somewhat limitedly into two camps, independent and AAA. Be that as it may, it is their willingness to challenge its audience's expectations that I feel should be commended. That they are willing to alienate a potential consumer, whether that be on the grounds of digital only or integrating an unfashionable mechanic, shows a blossoming strength of identity and artistic integrity, which I highly admire and respect. Ninja Theory has a history of making fairly solid experiences, ranging from mixed to mixed positive, but Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice marks a new chapter. In a way, it represents everything that came before, yet stands on its own. I get the feeling this will be the first step on an entirely new journey for the studio, and I do wish them the best of luck going forward. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to share your thoughts and comments about Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice here, or on my Facebook page or Twitter, the links to which are in the description box below. I try to read and respond to as many comments as I can. I'll see you soon in my next video. Thanks again.